I didn't choose the house because I loved it. I chose it because it was cheap, because I needed to get out, and because when your life falls apart you don't get picky about square footage. The realtor called it a quaint little craftsman with character. What she meant was, it creaked, it smelled faintly of mildew, and it had more shadows than windows. But it was mine, and after months of sleeping on a friend's couch, mine was enough. The first night I moved in, I told myself the noises were just the house introducing itself. Old wood shifting, pipes remembering their purpose, the refrigerator coughing itself awake. I unpacked a blanket, set a lamp on a stack of boxes, and told myself that once I settled, the house would feel warmer. Houses always do when they have someone breathing inside them. At 3 a.m., I woke to 3 knocks on my bedroom door. Not loud, not frantic. Just 3 deliberate taps, like someone trying not to wake the whole house. My eyes snapped open. For a second, I thought it was a dream, until I saw the lamp flicker faintly, as if it had felt the sound too. My breath caught. I lay perfectly still, staring at the door, waiting for a shadow under the crack. Nothing. Just silence. In the morning, I laughed it off. New house, new nerves. Maybe the wood contracted. Maybe my exhausted brain invented it. People hear what they expect to hear, right? I made coffee and told myself it wouldn't happen again. The second night, it did. Again at 3 a.m. Again 3 knocks. Same rhythm. Same pause afterward, like whoever was on the other side knew I was awake and listening. This time I stood, heart slamming against my ribs. I crossed the room, bare feet cold against the floor, and pressed my ear to the door. The paint was cool, smooth beneath my palm. I whispered, "Hello," because even fear has manners. Silence. But then, the faintest scrape, like a fingernail trailing across the wood. I stumbled back into bed and didn't close my eyes until the sun came up. On the third night, I left the door cracked. Part of me wanted proof. Part of me wanted to show the house I wasn't afraid. But fear doesn't care about your bravado. At exactly 3 o'clock, the knock came again. 3 taps. Only this time, the door, already ajar, moved half an inch inward with the last knock, as if nudged by invisible fingertips. I bolted upright, the lamp trembling on its stack of boxes. The air felt heavy, thick enough to chew. I shoved the door shut and pressed my back against it until dawn. The next day, I met my neighbor, Ruth. She was out front clipping roses, steel gray hair pinned tight, her cardigan the color of storm clouds. She squinted at me like she had already decided she didn't approve. "You moved into Mrs. Bell's place," she said, as if it were an accusation. I nodded, trying for polite. "Yeah, I'm Nora." Ruth kept snipping at her roses. "Any trouble yet? With the plumbing?" I joked weakly. "Or the floorboards? They definitely have opinions." Her eyes cut to mine, sharp as thorns. "With the back bedroom." My smile faltered. "What about it?" She looked back at the roses, voice flat. "Keep that door closed at night." My skin prickled. "Why?" "Because some doors don't just keep things out. Sometimes they invite things in." She didn't look up again, and I understood the conversation was over. That evening, unsettled, I examined the door more closely. The knob was old brass, worn smooth, leaving a faint metallic smell on my hand. Around the latch were thin scratches, half-moons carved into the paint, like someone had clawed at it. And near the hinge, under layers of paint, I saw the edge of a faded sticker. I picked at it until flakes peeled away. The words, though faint, were still legible. "Please do not open after 3. My stomach tightened. A prank? Something left behind by Mrs. Bell's grandchildren? Or a warning she meant to be taken seriously? That night, I stacked a line of salt along the baseboard. I'd read somewhere that salt protected against things that didn't belong. It made me feel better to do something. I went to bed with the door firmly shut, heart thudding like a second clock. 3 a.m. came like an appointment I hadn't agreed to keep. 3 knocks. Clear, calm, patient. The lamp flickered once, as though nodding to the rhythm. I held my breath, staring at the door. Then, slowly, the brass knob turned half an inch, just enough to whisper that it could open if it wanted to. My chest clenched. "Stop," I whispered, but the word came out brittle. The knob stilled. But then, a single tap, like a fingernail, deliberate and soft, right against the wood where my head rested on the other side. That was the first night I didn't sleep at all. And if you're the kind of person who just imagined that sound in your own bedroom, do yourself a favor. Hit subscribe now, because what came next made me wish I'd never touched that door. The next morning I told myself I was imagining things. Sleep deprivation can make you see shadows where there are none, hear whispers in the hum of the fridge. I even Googled old houses knocking at night and scrolled through pages of plumbing problems, wood expansion, air pressure. Logic is a lifeline when your fear feels stupid. But fear doesn't care about logic. All day the house seemed ordinary. Sunlight pooled across the hardwood floors, dust danced in lazy spirals, and the kitchen smelled faintly of the coffee I'd brewed too strong. I even laughed at myself once, standing in the hallway, staring at the door as if it would twitch just because I looked. "You're losing it, Nora," I muttered. The door didn't disagree. That night I decided to test it. I set my phone to record audio. I placed a glass of water on the floor near the door. Movies had taught me water ripples when things move. I told myself this was science. Proof one way or the other. I turned off the light and lay in bed, my eyes fixed on the faint outline of the door in the glow from the street lamp outside. 2:59, my heart drummed. 3 o'clock, 3 knocks. The glass of water trembled, the surface quivering in tiny concentric circles. My phone screen lit faintly as the microphone registered the sound. And then, the knob turned again, slow and certain, half an inch, and stilled. I sat frozen, breath shallow, the kind of stillness where your body thinks if you don't move, nothing can see you. The air felt charged, like the moment before lightning hits. Then came the scrape. A long, deliberate drag of fingernails down the wood, stopping exactly where my head rested on the other side. The glass of water tipped over. The knock had never touched it, but it fell anyway, spilling a thin silver stream across the floorboards. I snapped on the lamp. The room looked normal again, except the knob, which was turned just slightly out of place. My phone had captured the sound. I didn't dare play it back that night. The next morning, I checked the recording. 3 clean knocks, the scrape of nails, and something else, faint, buried under static. A whisper. I replayed it a dozen times, leaning closer each time, until my stomach dropped. It was a voice. A man's voice. Just 2 words, raspy, drawn out. Asterisk let me. Asterisk. I slammed the phone face down on the table. My hands shook too hard to pick it back up. That afternoon I called Ruth. "You said not to open the door after 3, I said without preamble. "Why?" She was silent long enough that I thought the line had cut. Then she said, "Because Mrs. Bell tried once." My chest tightened. And she didn't talk about it afterward. But she never slept in that room again. She moved to the den and left the bedroom locked. Locked? Until she died? Yes. Ruth's voice cracked like a dry twig. "You should do the same." I looked at the door as she said it, its brass knob glinting faintly in the afternoon light. It looked ordinary, but so do coffins. That night, I pushed a chair under the knob. A child's defense, flimsy and laughable, but it made me feel less helpless. I lay in bed, lamp on, phone recording again, heart pounding. 3 o'clock, 3 knocks. Louder this time, impatient. The chair rattled faintly as if tested. The knob twisted once, hard, then stilled. I whispered, "What do you want?" before I could stop myself. The air dropped 10 degrees. The lamp flickered. And then, another whisper, closer this time, right against the wood. Asterisk you. Asterisk. I clamped both hands over my mouth, biting back a scream. The chair creaked, but held. After a long moment, silence returned. No more knocks. No more whispers. Just my own ragged breathing. If you were lying there with me, if you just felt your stomach drop hearing that whisper, make sure to subscribe right now. Because I promise, what happened next was worse. Much worse. I didn't sleep at all. By dawn, I shoved the chair back, opened the door, and found the hallway empty. But the salt line I'd poured along the baseboard was scattered, the grain smeared outward like something had stepped through. I tried to convince myself to leave. Pack a bag, find a motel, never look back. But the truth is, I couldn't. The house had its claws in me. Each letter of Ruth's warning, each scrape on the door, each whisper. It all felt personal now, like the house wasn't just haunted, it was speaking directly to me. Leaving would have been like running from a question that would chase me anyway. During the day, the house pretended to be harmless. Sunlight softened the wallpaper, the floorboards only sighed when I stepped too hard. The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and toast. If I walked through the rooms quickly enough, I could almost believe it was just a creaky old place. Almost. But every time I passed the bedroom door, I saw the scratches near the latch. Thin crescents, overlapping like someone had clawed at it again and again. When I touched them, they weren't just grooves. They were deep, almost like burns. My fingertips tingled. I yanked my hand back and told myself I imagined it. That night, I set up my phone camera facing the door. I needed to see. Proof is a kind of courage. At 2:59, I was already awake, blanket pulled up to my chin, hard in my throat. 3 o'clock. 3 knocks. The knob twisted once, hard enough to make the chair I'd wedged beneath it jump an inch. The camera light blinked red, recording everything. Then came the whisper, clearer this time, dragging across the wood. Asterisk, let me in. Asterisk. The lamp flickered, dimmed, then surged so bright I had to cover my eyes. When it steadied, the salt line by the door was gone. Not scattered this time. Gone. As if someone had vacuumed it up grain by grain. I pressed myself against the headboard, whispering, "Stop. Please, stop." The knocking did. But then came something worse, a slow, deliberate breathing. Deep inhales, ragged exhales, right against the door. I could hear it through the wood, feel it in the vibrations of the knob. And then a laugh. Low, guttural, humorless. I almost screamed. Instead, I threw the blanket over my head like a terrified child and whispered prayers I didn't believe. The breathing went on for a long time, then faded. When I dared to look again, the room was empty. The door was just a door, but my phone still blinked red. In the morning, I watched the recording. My stomach lurched. At 3 o'clock, the door shivered visibly on camera, as if someone had slammed it once, though no sound registered. The chair under the knob slid aside without hands. And then, faintly, for a fraction of a second, the gap beneath the door went completely black, darker than the shadows around it. And in that blackness, 2 pinpricks of light blinked like eyes. I slammed the laptop shut, heart racing. I called Ruth again. "You said Mrs. Bell tried to open the door once," I said, voice shaking. "What happened to her after?" Silence. Then, she stopped leaving the house. My skin prickled. "Why?" Ruth sighed. "Because when you open a door, something always comes through. And sometimes, it doesn't leave." Her words rooted in me like ice. "You think I should move out? I think you should run," Ruth said, and hung up. I didn't. Instead, I dug deeper. I searched online archives, old obituaries. Mrs. Bell's husband had died 30 years ago. The article mentioned a tragic accident in the house. Details were scarce, but one line stuck with me. Asterisk found at the bedroom door. Marks of resistance visible. Asterisk. Resistance. Scratches. Fingernails. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stared at my own door, at the grooves etched into the paint. My heart whispered, asterisk, those aren't just history. They're instructions. Asterisk. That night, I piled everything I had against the door. The dresser, the chair, even the boxes I hadn't unpacked. The knob gleamed faintly in the lamplight like an eye that never blinked. I told myself it couldn't move. 3 o'clock. The knocks came louder this time. The dresser rattled, the boxes shifted. One toppled, spilling clothes across the floor. Then came the whisper, right against the barrier. Asterisk, you can't keep me out. Asterisk. The lamp flared so bright it buzzed. The glass of water on the nightstand shook, ripples racing across the surface. And then, silence. I exhaled slowly, relief flooding me. But when I looked again, my blood ran cold. The knob was turning anyway. The dresser and chair strained forward as if pulled by invisible hands. Something wanted in, and it didn't care about furniture. I clutched my phone like a lifeline, whispering into the empty room. If anyone ever hears this, please believe me. And if you're still listening to my story now, ask yourself, would you stay another night? Comment your answer, and don't forget to subscribe. Because the next night, the house didn't just knock. It answered. By the 4th night, fear had turned into obsession. I should have packed my bags. I should have listened to Ruth. I should have run. But instead, I stayed, watching the clock like it was a bomb counting down. My body moved through the day like a ghost, but my mind lived at 3 a.m. Everything before it was just waiting. Everything after it was surviving. I decided I couldn't just sit and listen anymore. I needed to confront it, or at least prove to myself there was nothing there. So I bought candles, the thick white kind, and lined them along the dresser, the the nightstand, the floor near the door. I told myself the light would help. I told myself the flame would show me the truth. Fear makes scientists out of desperate people. At 2:45, I set my phone on record again, pointed directly at the door. The chair was wedged under the knob, the dresser pressed tight against it. I sat on the bed clutching a kitchen knife. Ridiculous, I know, but steel is heavier than prayer. 2:59. The candles flickered. Not out, just swayed, like a breath moved through the room. 3 o'clock. The 3 knocks came, louder than before, rattling the dresser. The chair shivered. The knife slipped in my sweaty hand. And then the voice. Not whispered this time. Spoken, low and steady, like someone standing inches from the wood. Asterisk, let me in, Nora. Asterisk. It knew my name. The sound hollowed me out. My legs went numb. My fingers clutched the blanket until it tore. The knob twisted. The chair scraped. The dresser lurched forward an inch. My phone camera caught everything, the little red light winking like it was complicit. I forced myself to shout, "What do you want?" The room went dead silent. Even the candles froze, flames stiff as statues. And then came the answer, soft but clear. Asterisk, you already know. Asterisk. I didn't. I swear I didn't. But my stomach dropped anyway, like some part of me did know and had been hiding it all along. The knocks came again, furious this time, shaking the whole door. The dresser groaned. The chair tipped over. I lunged forward, pressed my shoulder against the wood, knife still in hand. It was warm. The door was warm, like someone pressed their body against the other side. I whispered, "Go away," voice breaking. And then came laughter. Not human. Too deep. Too broken. Like someone trying to mimic laughter without remembering how. I stumbled back, candles guttering out one by one until only a single flame flickered weakly near the bed. Shadows pooled in the corners, stretching long fingers across the ceiling. And then silence. The knob stilled. The breathing stopped. The house exhaled. I didn't realize I'd been crying until I tasted salt on my lips. I backed into the far corner of the room, knife still raised, eyes glued to the door. Hours passed like that, the sky lightening, birds starting to chatter, the house returning to its false innocence. When I finally dared to open the door at 7 a.m., the hallway looked normal. But on the wood, just below the knob, 3 new gouges had appeared. Deep, raw, fresh. Not scratches from decades ago. From last night. That afternoon, I went to Ruth's house. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been waiting. "You look like death," she said flatly. "It knows my name," I whispered. It spoke to me. Ruth's face tightened. She ushered me inside and poured tea into a chipped mug, hands trembling just slightly. "Mrs. Bell told me once the house learns. The longer you stay, the closer it gets. It feeds on familiarity. First the knocks, then the voice, then the face." The face. My voice cracked. Ruth stared at me over her mug. "Don't open that door, Nora. Whatever you do, don't." I walked home in the late afternoon light, the house waiting for me at the end of the street. Its windows looked like eyes. The front door creaked open too easily, like it had been expecting me. I wanted to leave. God, I wanted to leave. But the box of candles was still in my room. My phone was still on the nightstand. And some twisted part of me needed to know what happened next. Because once you've heard your name whispered through wood, you can't unhear it. You need to know who, or what, is calling you. That night, I didn't set up candles. I didn't push the dresser. I didn't wedge the chair. I sat on the bed, bare room, door shut, knife in my lap. I thought maybe surrender would give me answers. 3 o'clock came like a drumbeat. 3 knocks. And then the voice again, smoother this time, almost gentle. "Asterisk, please. Just once." Asterisk. The knob turned slowly, smoothly, like a handshake being offered. I clutched the knife tighter, shaking. "Why me?" I asked. The voice chuckled, low and dark. "Asterisk, because you answered." Asterisk. The wood bulged inward, just slightly, like something pressed its weight against it. The knob spun all the way down. My phone toppled from the nightstand. The knife slipped from my grasp. And then, through the silence, one final whisper slid into the room. "Asterisk, tomorrow, you won't have a choice." Asterisk. If you're still with me, if you felt that chill crawl down your spine just now, subscribe. Because what happened the next night? I wouldn't believe it myself if I didn't live it. I didn't leave the house on the 5th day. I barely moved from the couch. staring at the walls like they were waiting for me to blink. Ruth's warning replayed in my head. Asterisk, the longer you stay, the closer it gets. Asterisk, she was right. It already knew my name. It already knew my fear. And tonight, it promised I wouldn't have a choice. By sunset, the house had grown too quiet. Even the pipes seemed to hold their breath. I carried the box of candles back to my room, lined them along the dresser and the baseboard, lit them one by one until the room glowed soft and trembling. The knife lay on the nightstand, its handle slick with my sweat, even though I hadn't touched it yet. My phone was angled toward the door, recording in silence. At 2:50, I was already shaking. By 2:59, my teeth were chattering. The air smelled faintly of smoke, though the candles burned clean. The knob gleamed like an eye. 3 o'clock. 3 knocks. Harder than ever, making the dresser jump, the candles shiver. Nora, the voice crooned. Not rasping now. Smooth. Familiar, almost like my father's voice in an old recording. Open the door. Please. My chest caved in. I clutched the blanket like it could shield me from the weight of that sound. You're not him, I whispered. You're not. The voice chuckled. Asterisk, don't you want to know? Asterisk. The knob turned, smooth and steady. The dresser scraped forward, though I hadn't moved it. The chair rattled against the floor. Stop, I shouted, tears stinging my eyes. Stop. The candles guttered out, one by one, plunging the room into chunks of shadow until only the one nearest the door still burned. In that fragile light, I saw it. A bulge in the wood, as if a hand pressed from the other side. Fingers, pushing. I backed into the corner, shaking. Why me? The voice was low, rich, almost tender. Asterisk, because you answered. Because you listened. And now you belong to the house. Asterisk. The bulge deepened. The knob spun violently, rattling. The last candle blew out. The room went black. And then, from the other side of the door, I heard breathing. My breathing. Perfectly timed, perfectly mirrored. I don't know how long I crouched there. Minutes, hours, maybe only seconds stretched until they broke. The silence thickened, crushing. I forced myself to crawl toward the nightstand, my hand fumbling for the phone. The screen lit my face pale blue. The recording app showed red. It had been running for 10 minutes. I pressed play. 3 knocks. The scrape of nails. The voice. Asterisk Nora. Asterisk. And then something else. Something I hadn't heard with my ears, but the phone had captured. Whispering. Dozens of whispers, layered, voices overlapping in a chorus. Asterisk, join us. Join us. Join us. Asterisk. I dropped the phone. My heart seized. The door creaked. Slowly, impossibly, the latch slid open even though the dresser still pressed against it. A crack widened. From the blackness beyond, 2 pinpricks of white light blinked like eyes. I screamed and threw my body against the dresser, shoving it back into place. The crack vanished, but not before I felt it. A hand, ice cold, brushing mine. I sobbed until my throat was raw. At some point the knocking stopped. At some point the breathing faded. At some point the house let me go. When morning came, sunlight poured across the floor like nothing had happened. The door stood closed. But etched deep into the wood, fresh and raw, were words. Asterisk, see you tomorrow. Asterisk. I called Ruth in a panic, babbling what had happened. She was silent for a long time, then said softly, It's chosen you. What does that mean? I cried. It means you can leave the house, Nora. You can run. But it will follow. Because once you answer, once you listen, it knows you forever. My knees buckled. How do I stop it? You don't, Ruth whispered. You endure it. And then she hung up. I'm telling you this because I don't know how many more nights I can endure. Because tonight, when the clock hits 3, the house won't knock anymore. It won't ask. It won't wait. And if you've been listening this far, if your heart's been pounding with mine, hit subscribe. Because I promise, the next part of this story is the one I might not survive to tell. So tell me, if it were you, if you heard your name whispered through the wood in the dead of night, would you open the door? Comment below. Because tomorrow night, I just might.